middle school camp retreat kind of thing at the end of the summer, and there's going to be a campfire on the last night. And I remember the youth minister at the time who came my senior year was Deech. And Deech asked me if I would share my testimony on that last night, like around the campfire with all the kids. And I was really kind of taken aback by that and kind of surprised by that. So when we talk about sharing your story, a testimony can be you're recording an account of something. So a lot of times we hear testimony in the context of like a courtroom or something, but it's giving your account to something, testifying to something, speaking of God at work in your life, particularly when we think about a church context. So the God at work in your life, or maybe after. Sometimes we ask people to share testimonies after an event or a particular experience. But a lot of times testimony can mean your faith story, like how you came to know Christ and grow in your faith with Christ. And so that was what I was being asked to do, was to share like how I came to know Christ. And I was super intimidated by this, one, because that puts you in a place of vulnerability, of like kind of letting the walls come down and sharing in front of people like who you are and how you came to know Christ and what your struggles are. And then two, it's like, well, I mostly grew up in the church. Like we didn't always go to church when I was little, and it was really more really high school when I really got more involved in church. But I felt like my story was kind of boring. And so I felt like, what am I going to have to say that's going to inspire people with my story? Like, will they want to hear what I have to say? But through that process of putting words to my story, like actually having to think through what am I going to say and put these words on paper, that I realized that how I came to a personal relationship with Christ and how that evolved over time, like it almost inspired me, because it reminded me that we all have a story, and no matter how boring it might seem to us, we never know how it might connect with somebody else or inspire somebody else who might feel the same way. Because yes, times when I've heard people tell their stories who maybe have come to know Christ they had some type of addiction, or they had a very tragic kind of family loss, or came from a difficult family home. Well, those have always been really inspiring and like encouraging to me in my faith. I've always thought, in comparison, which we shouldn't compare, but we do, and sometimes we feel intimidated by that or feel, well, I can't fully relate to that person's story. But I was reminded through the process of forming my own testimony that we all have a story. And from Romans 1:11 through 12, from this scripture passage, it says, I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. That is, that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. Here in this passage, Paul is writing and trying to encourage other Christians in the faith. So not even thinking about people who might not know Christ, just here in this passage trying to encourage each other on the faith, because we need that too. We need to share our stories so that we can be reminded of where God is at work in our lives, so that we're not just going through the motions with our faith, and see where God's at work in the world and help keep each other accountable when we do have struggle points, because it's going to happen. And so please know there's a lot of different ways to share your faith. We often encourage you to share your faith through your actions, through your deeds, through service, how you treat other people, through your attitude. And those are all really good things. But we hope that in just this 2 weeks, we can talk about how we can share our faith with our words specifically. One of the reasons we wanted to do this series is because we have a Sunday night youth planning team that meets monthly with the staff to help create and shape what we do on Sunday night. Some of you are in that group, and it's a group of 7th through 12th graders. And one of the things when we asked them, like, what's something you struggle with? What do you think other people like need to hear? Was, well, I don't really know how to share my faith, especially when it comes to people who maybe don't know Christ. So that was a significant thing that we talked about in that group. But also it's a proven statistic. So coming from the book called Almost Christian by this lady's name is Kenda Creasy Dean. She's an awesome author, but she's also professor at Princeton Theological Seminary and United Methodist minister as well. And in this book, they did research from the National Study of Youth and Religion. And one of the things they found is that they studied across the nation, one of the findings is that teenagers significantly struggle with articulating, so verbalizing their faith. So when it comes to questions like, why do you believe in Jesus? Or why do you go to church? Why is your faith important to you? Teenagers share they often struggle with putting words. Like they're like, well, I'm a Christian. I've grown up in the church. But really thinking through and trying to answer those questions. And I imagine many of us adults in the room can kind of relate to that too. It places us in a place of vulnerability and can sometimes be hard to have words to put to those questions and answer them honestly. So later in small groups tonight, we're going to hear from some people in just a little bit, but later in small groups, groups, we hope you'll start to have a conversation in your groups about what does it mean to have a testimony? We all have a story, but how can we start to put words to it and start to understand our own story in the context of Christian community? And then next week, we'll hear a little bit more and be challenged to think about what does it mean to share our faith beyond these walls, and how can we potentially share our faith with maybe people who don't know Christ. So we're about to watch a video, and while that happens, I'm just thinking about how we all have a story. We've got two students and a small group leader who are going to come and share and just help us to practice, and we'll get to watch that unfold, what it means to share their story. So they're going to come on up while we watch this video. All right, well, y'all go ahead and give them a round of applause just for being up here, first of all. And if you could turn up just a little bit light just so they can see out, just to kind of know who they're talking to, might make them a little more comfortable too. So first, if you guys can share just your name, great if you have one, and just a little bit of background about where you're from.
I'm Brendan Liederbach. I go to Ravenwood. I'm a senior. I'm from Brentwood, Tennessee, and yeah.
I'm Reagan Homan. I'm a senior at Ravenwood. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, but I've lived here most of my life. And go Raptors.
I'm Janet Byers. I'm a senior at Ravenwood, and actually, I'm 50 years old. And I was born in Opelika, Alabama, and I was the second of 4 girls. And we moved to a farm when I was 9, and I was raised basically in the country in Hickman County, Tennessee. Go Bulldogs.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's it.
Awesome. Okay, so they're not prepared with this question, but just to kind of help break the ice and help make sure you guys kind of feel like you get to know them. This is a really important one, so you're going to have to dig deep and think about this. If you could be a kitchen appliance, which one would you be and why? Real important. Anyone jump in?
A spatula for sure. There's a lot of different spatulas in the kitchens out there, but
Nylon or stainless steel?
Stainless steel.
Check critical.
It's important.
Easy to wash.
I think I'd be a dishwasher because I could. Well, for one, that's actually what I do a lot of, and also I think dishwasher helps others be ready to be useful again. Helps it to refresh and renews. Yeah. So.
Nice.
Probably one of those little whisk things, that makes the cake batter.
Yeah.
Because they never run out of energy, They make all the cakes come together. So that's what I'm
Nice.
Who
about.
doesn't like cake?
Are you like the Energizer Bunny?
Yeah, it just keeps
Okay.
going around.
All right, thank you. I'm so glad we got that one out of the way. That was a really important one. Also, when and where would you say you first learned about Jesus? We'll transition there.
Yeah, dishwasher to Jesus.
That's right.
Definitely, I was raised in a United Methodist home even. My parents took us to church, like it or not, since I was young. But so I would say VBS and Sunday school, just kind of gradual learning of Jesus' existence.
Yeah, same with me. I grew up going to Fellowship Bible Church, and just throughout my life I've been going to Sunday school and church retreats. And around 9th grade I started coming to Bumpsy and started going to Wednesday nights and Sunday nights.
When I lived in Florida, I was a big part of the church there. And then when I moved here in 5th grade, I started coming here since the 5th grade, I guess.
For y'all, do you feel like there's a defining moment when you accepted Christ? Can you pinpoint it, or did it happen over time?
I get to go first again. So yes, well, I don't think I ever rejected Christ, but I definitely had an experience at a revival in my little country church in Prim Springs, Tennessee, where I just felt a revelation that I understood that Jesus was to be Lord of my life, and there was like this clarity around what that meant. And I went down front to just as I am, and accepted Christ, and really that was really a turning point. I was definitely changed and kind of sought out His wisdom in the Bible a lot more after that. So, but also had some other great seed planting experiences through church camp and counselors I had there and stuff like that.
I was probably 13 years old. I was at a church retreat with a couple buddies of mine, and I just the whole entire week there really changed me as a believer. I accepted Christ into my life and just realized like I needed to stop going through the motions, like going to church and just not really listening, and just like, I don't know, I wasn't really into Christianity as a whole. Like, I just didn't know what it was about until that retreat really taught me like what it meant to be a believer. And I get 13.
I guess for me, one of the most like memorable little Sunday school things I had was when I lived in Florida, and the preacher was talking about like sharing the good news and all this stuff, but I didn't know what they were referring to. I was like, what good news? I mean, it sounds like kind of exciting, but I didn't really know what it was. And so I asked my mom about it that night, and she told me the whole Jesus spiel and how He came back from the dead and we should go spread it throughout everyone's lives. And I was like, it sounds pretty cool. I want to be a part of this. And so like throughout the years, I thought that like committing myself to Christ was like an insurance thing. Like kind of like the more you do it, like the more insured you are. So like for like 5 years, I was like, okay, it's time for me to commit myself again. But it was like the same thing as the year before. So.
I remember being confused about that growing up. Like, every time they do an altar call, are you supposed to go down because your friends are going down, or am I supposed to feel a certain way? And I'm sure I did that sometimes because of that reason. But there are eventually, as I grew up, I kind of realized I don't have to, and what it means. The difference between rededicating your life to Christ and accepting Jesus, for the first time, and really listening to speakers when they said that. Anyway, I just remember
Makes sense.
being a little confused
optional.
along the way. Yeah, so
I gotcha.
what about you, Brendan?
It just definitely takes like maturity, like to accept Christ. Like once I got out of middle school and like elementary school, I definitely realized what it meant to be a Christian and like accept Christ.
Can y'all think of a time when you really grew in your trust of God? Like a story or an instance?
Wednesday nights have really helped me come to trust God. Being able to share whatever's on my heart every Wednesday with the Bible study guys and Adam has really just brought me really close to God and trust everyone.
Like a particular lesson at all, or just being a part of that community?
Being a part of that, and just this year we started How Is It With Your Soul, and just every week being able to relate like how your relationship over the past week has been with Christ is really impactful. To know like whether you need to start praying more or start going to church more has really helped me.
Very cool.
When we went to Haiti, I was really nervous because I thought like I was gonna contract like all the diseases and like get food poisoning and all that stuff. But it really helped me grow in my trust with God, because I wasn't really like expecting anything like when we went there, because I'd never been to a third world country before. But I remember it was the last morning we were there, and we were at like their little church service and stuff, and they had started singing, and it was just like, it's so different than like anything you see in America. I mean, nothing against America or anything. Like, this is great and all, but it's just like a different experience. And I started crying, and I like looked to my right, and Maddie Youngener's like sobbing. She goes, "I told you so." And I was just like, yeah, thanks God. It's a nice little wake up call.
Yeah.
I just always have felt closer to God when I'm actually doing a Bible study, and there was a time. I think it was before Andrew was born, so whenever that was, 15 years ago, I did a study it was about the fruit of the Spirit. It was a Beth Moore study, and it just came at a time in our lives, mine and my husband's, And it really changed my whole relationship with God. It made it a lot more real and felt a lot closer to God, and helped prepare me for a lot of other stuff that came down the pike later on. But that was just a really dear, sweet time. That was, but I think it was all about kind of Bible study for me. Like whenever I'm dedicated to a little bit of that, it goes a long way in my faith. But I'm not disciplined about it, so don't be thinking that.
Don't be too impressed.
Don't be too impressed. That was 15 years ago.
Though, y'all had different experiences, like through people and sharing, through Bible study, and like through an experience, like being out of your comfort zone. That like that trust in God can happen in different ways and at different points in our life with different people. Can you think about a time when you like really struggled with your faith or doubted or questioned God?
Not really a specific time, but like, as you all know, we all are really busy with school and extracurricular activities. I guess just a time I've gotten really distant from God is whenever I've really mixed up my priorities and just haven't put Him first in my life. And I've just haven't really focused my life around church and God. And I just don't pray. I don't go to church that much because I think I have other important stuff to do whenever it's really not as important as my relationship with Christ. So just like getting a lot of homework and doing too much stuff outside of school has just made me distant from God sometimes.
I'd agree with Brendan, especially like for me, like the distance with God kind of like correlated with college application deadlines. Like the more time like the application was coming nearer, and I just felt like so distant from God, and I didn't know like how to sort through things or how to make decisions, which like probably it should be like the opposite way. But yeah, just with the whole workload thing, and senior year isn't as glorious as I thought it was going to be. It's been kind of up and down, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really struggled with my faith at a time when we were at a church in Hendersonville, and in like a 2 or 3 month period, it seems like it may have been a little bit longer than that, we lost a 17-year-old in our church in a single car accident on her way to work at a preschool in a summer morning, at 7:30. Her name was Darla Dickey. And another girl, a 12-year-old in our church. And it was a small church, so everyone knew everyone. We were like family. They helped us raise our children. But a 12-year-old was hit by a car, just out of the blue nonsense, just made no sense for these two girls to die. And we had opportunity to pray for them before they died. And there were little signs of hope, like at each one of them. And it just seemed like God was, wow, it's going to happen. They're going to be okay. And they both died. So it just felt like a huge disappointment with God. He didn't pull through. We were all praying so hard, and that was a struggle. That was a time of struggle for sure. And those families too. But amazingly, God still ended up being really glorified through both of their deaths, but not. It was hard.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
How do you feel like your life is, in what ways is it different because of Jesus being a part of your life?
Definitely reminds me to be a nicer person, because I know I can be pretty mean sometimes. It really just...
How mean can you be?
As you smile, as you say that.
I don't know, just ask my friends. Pretty mean.
To bring them up here.
I guess one of an adjective to describe it would just be like caring. It just makes you a better person. The actions that you can have if you're trying to glorify God.
Yeah. For me, I guess like knowing God has kind of been like come and go, like kind of like in cycles, like I was talking about. But in the end, I think it's about like purpose, because whether you like feel His presence or not, I know He's there. I don't know why else we would be here if He's not there. So I guess just kind of trying to think about, the day-to-day, like why we're here. I guess that kind of makes sense. Because there has to be a point to it all, and if there's no God, then like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So I feel like Jesus was a reason that I could deal with a really hard time in our life. And I told Jessica I'd cry, and here I am, I'm crying. Don't feel bad for me, it's okay. But Jessica just really struggled with depression and had some really hard times of self-harm and stuff like that. I got her permission to say that. But Jesus gave me peace. I mean, I had peace through that. And it was only because of him. Because it was a hard thing as a mom.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. No. I told you I wouldn't cry enough for tissues. I said that. Anyway, so that was huge. But Jesus was there, and it really was the reason for peace. And that peace is just, that's how I know Jesus is with me when things are hard. It's the peace that comes from that. But another thing I thought of regarding that question was just being able to view all people as children of God, regardless of social status or race or anything. I mean, we're all created in his image, and none of us are more important than anyone else. Sorry, that wasn't supposed to make me cry. I'm on a roll. And I guess also just being able to show love or grace to other people, even when it seems unlikely or undeserved, or, that's not humanly, like that's not something that we are naturally born to do. And I feel like that comes from Jesus. He is the King of peace and grace, undeserved love and grace.
Yeah.
The end.
Awesome. Yeah, it can impact and affect us in lots of different ways, how we treat and respond to people and the emotion, like responses we get when we know hard times are coming. But Reagan pointed to this, that but a trust and belief that God is still there, even in the midst of some of those difficulties. And you kind of said this, Reagan, it's a journey, we're not always in the same place. Sometimes we're not always moving forward. It's not always glorious in a relationship with God. So where do you guys feel like you're at right now? If you could describe it in just 3 words, just try and think of 3 words to think about where am I at in my relationship with God right now? What 3 words would you use?
I can go because I got a sneak peek at that question. So I'll go first. I said growing, loving, but distracted.
That's 4 words.
Omit, but. Growing, loving, distracted. You are mean.
You just had to let that come to life.
Wow.
Didn't you? Okay.
Gotta go by the rules.
Rule follower, I like it.
I guess wanting more knowledge.
Phrase.
Yeah, it's like a phrase.
That's a sentence.
I would say honest, come and go, and question mark / exclamation point.
Oh,
We're
Reagan
working
just
on
did
it.
whatever she wanted with that. Okay. Awesome. Okay, next week we'll talk a little bit more about just kind of our opening time, what it means to share your faith with people who maybe don't know Jesus. But have you guys ever shared your testimony before, maybe in this setting or with somebody one-on-one? Is that something you've ever done before? And then share maybe about the experience.
The only really time I've ever shared my faith was whenever I went on a mission trip to Honduras, and we had a daily devotional every night back at the hotel. And last year I shared just about how seeing the people there completely changed my perspective on Christianity and just life in general. How grateful they are for everything just really changed who I was. And just the happiness that they had received, that one Sunday morning we got to worship with them, was nothing like I had ever seen before. So I just saw a happiness and joyfulness from worshiping God with some orphan boys who had horrible stories that I could never battle through.
Yeah.
And I would say yes. I'm 50 years old, and I've been in the church my whole life, so I have. But like in high school and through Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I was very involved there, and as a camp counselor at Camp Cedar Crest, and different opportunities just through my life, as you know, to tell my story, kind of in the way we've, just things that you've asked us here. But
I've never really done it like in this kind of setting, like start to finish. Whenever I've shared my story, it's more in like bits and pieces, either with friends or at choir tour or in Haiti and stuff like that. But it's nice to kind of just process through it.
Yeah,
all, I
through
guess.
all of it, kind of the highs and the lows. But sometimes we just celebrate on like the good stuff sometimes too in our story. Well, what was it like doing it right now? Sharing. You kind of just answered that a little bit, Reagan, so you might be off the hook. But what was it like doing it right now?
A lot less nerve-wracking than I thought it was going to be. It was nice.
I agree. I feel pretty chill up here.
Good.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right. Awesome. Well, let's thank them so much for sharing tonight. Y'all were great. So we'll be back. Made it sound like a talk show or something. We'll be back next week, and we'll hear from a couple other students and a small group leader. But we'll close out with a word of prayer before you guys go to group. So if you don't mind holding hands with a neighbor, and we'll say a prayer.